My former intern stole my words, used them in her artist statement, and built her whole show-off essays I wrote to keep her afloat. Then my aunt had the nerve to say I'm the one causing drama by going quiet. I found out through Instagram. There was Lila, standing in the middle of an art gallery in New York, grinning wide in a black dress, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Only those who truly shaped my life are here tonight." I stared at it for a solid minute, waiting for my name to be mentioned in the tags or the stories. Nothing. No text, no call, no heads up. Just, excluded. My name is Vincent. I'm 34 years old and I live in Chicago. I work as a tech consultant, but more than that, I was the guy who helped Lila survive. Literally, she was my intern once, back when she was 19 and barely out of a toxic home in Indiana. When she finally left that place, she crashed on my couch for 2 months. I co-signed her lease when no one else would, helped her pick classes, paid her art school deposit with my own money. I wasn't trying to be a hero. She reminded me of someone I used to be, lost and needing just one person to bet on her. And I did. So seeing that post, seeing her bask in success and knowing I wasn't even an afterthought, felt like a gut punch I didn't know how to brace for. I called my aunt the next morning. She raised me after my parents died. She had always seen Lila as some stray I'd taken in. When I told her what happened, she barely looked up from her coffee. "It's just an event, Vince. Don't make it a tragedy." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "I raised that girl. You helped her. There's a difference, right? Like co-signing leases and waking up at 2 in the morning to walk her through panic attacks was just help." The next day, I booked a solo trip to Vancouver. I didn't even think twice about it. No RSVP regrets. No texts. I just clicked confirm and packed my camera and a week's worth of flannel. If she could curate her circle, I could curate my peace. And it's not like I wanted some grand gesture. But after all we'd been through, not even a seat at the back of the room, that stung in a way I didn't have words for. It was like being erased from a chapter you helped write. On the plane, I scrolled back through our old texts. Her first photo in her new apartment, mattress on the floor, pizza box on her lap. Her sending me sketches at 2 in the morning like they were secrets too big to hold. All of it, gone from her narrative. By the time we touched down in Vancouver, I had decided I wasn't going to reach out. Not a message, not a passive-aggressive like. If she wanted a version of her life where I didn't exist, fine, let her have it. Some absences speak louder than words. Vancouver felt like another planet. Cool air, quiet streets, people who didn't know my name or my history. I turned off my notifications as soon as I stepped out of the airport. No emails, no texts, no digital noise. I needed distance, not just miles, but silence too. I rented a small Airbnb near the water. Nothing fancy, just a place with wide windows and a view of the harbor. Each morning, I'd make myself coffee and wander until my legs got tired. I hiked coastal trails with my camera slung over my shoulder, took photos of fog drifting between trees, and let my mind go quiet for the first time in months. One afternoon, I posted a picture of the sea, gray waves, driftwood stacked like bones. The caption was short. Sometimes solitude is the safest crowd. I didn't expect anyone to care, but that post, it blew up more than I thought it would. Nothing dramatic, but enough to catch attention. My phone started vibrating on the hotel nightstand. Missed calls from my aunt. 2 vague texts from Lila. "Hey, can we talk? Hope you're okay." I didn't reply. I just locked the screen and dropped the phone back on the nightstand. Later that night, I opened Instagram again. Lila had posted a story, a boomerang of clinking wine glasses. Her caption said, "Celebrating with those who matter most." Still no mention of me. That one cut deeper than the last. It wasn't even the omission. It was the pointed nature of it, like she was making a statement, drawing a line. And the worst part? Everyone in that room probably nodded along, thinking they were the ones who got her there. They didn't see the version of her who cried on my floor or needed me to spot her for groceries in sophomore year. Every little gesture I had filed under, "This is what family does," she had filed under temporary. I tried going for a walk to shake it off, but my thoughts followed me like fog on my heels. I started thinking about the first time she called me big brother in a text, how proud she was when she got her scholarship, how she used to say, "You're the only person who makes me feel like I'm not crazy." I guess that only counted until I wasn't useful anymore. That night, I sat on the deck of the Airbnb, wrapped in a blanket, listening to distant ferry horns. I wasn't angry, not the way I expected. It was more like watching a wound scab over too fast. The kind of pain that didn't burn, it just settled. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, letting the stillness do what it does best. Letting it remind me that sometimes the people you save are the first ones to forget you ever held them above water. I woke up to a DM from an old college friend I hadn't heard from in years. "Hey, not trying to stir anything, but people were asking why you weren't at Lila's launch. Thought you two were close." I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trying to figure out what to say. In the end, I just typed, "Sometimes people outgrow the ones who built their ladders." Then I deleted it. I didn't respond at all. That morning, I took a photo of the mountains from the balcony, heavy clouds folding over the peaks. I posted it with a caption, "Absence speaks more than any toast ever could." No tags, no context, but I knew the people who needed to see it would see it. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. My aunt, this time, text only. "Lila's nervous. Don't cause more drama, okay? Let her have this moment." I read it twice. Don't cause more drama. As if me being hurt, me being quietly hurt, was the disruption. As if not being invited to a major milestone in someone's life after giving years of mine to support them was something I was supposed to shrug off like an unexpected rainstorm. My uncle called too. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I played it on speaker while brushing my teeth. Vinny, come on, man. You're overthinking it. Girls and their art shows, you know how they get. You're like a brother to her. Don't take it personal. I shut it off halfway through. Funny how everyone had advice when it was my feelings in question. Be the bigger person. Don't make it about you. Let her shine. Not one person asked, how are you? Not one. That afternoon, I walked to the water's edge and sat on a bench for hours, just watching the tide roll in and out. Families passed behind me, kids throwing rocks, couples walking dogs. The world kept spinning, and I realized, for the first time in a long time, I didn't owe anyone a reaction. I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to explain the years of sacrifices, or tally up every time I'd shown up for Lila when no one else did. I had receipts, not just the literal kind, tuition, rent, groceries, but emotional ones. Nights spent talking her down from panic attacks. Days I rearranged my entire schedule just to make her feel seen. But none of that mattered now. People wanted me to show up and smile, to pretend nothing hurt, to perform loyalty while swallowing pain. Instead, I chose silence. Because silence was the only boundary they couldn't argue with. The day of Lila's gallery launch, I booked myself a massage. It wasn't intentional at first. I'd seen the spa pamphlet in the Airbnb kitchen drawer a couple days earlier and circled the deep tissue option. By the time the appointment rolled around, it felt like divine timing. My phone was still on Do Not Disturb, my inbox ignored. I didn't want updates. I didn't want reminders. Just peace. The masseuse was a soft-spoken woman named Avery, and the room smelled like eucalyptus and lavender. She dimmed the lights and said, just breathe. And for a while, I did. Until my phone started vibrating, hard and fast, against the chair where I'd left it with my jeans. I tried to ignore it, but something about the pattern, long pause, then rapid bursts, made my gut twist. After the session, I dried off, sipped the mint tea they handed me, and finally checked. 11 missed calls. 6 from my aunt, 1 from Lila's assistant, a few numbers I didn't recognize, and a text from my uncle. Turn on the news. I didn't have cable at the Airbnb, but I didn't need it. Twitter had already exploded. Instagram too. I typed Lila's name into the search bar and instantly saw it. The video. Shaky phone footage from someone in the crowd. Lila was at the podium in her black satin dress, hands wrapped tightly around the mic. Behind her, huge canvases, her signature collage style, lit up the room. Everything looked perfect. Then a voice cut in from the back. A woman, sharp and loud. That's not your story. A beat of silence. Then rustling. The camera turned to show a woman walking toward the podium, one of the curators. I realized. Her voice was calm but clipped. We reviewed your artist statement. Multiple phrases and paragraphs were lifted directly from work submitted by your former mentor, without attribution. Lila blinked. She stuttered something inspired by, but the woman didn't stop. That's not what you said in your application. You said the words were yours. We've verified the timestamps. Murmurs spread through the room like a brush fire. Someone in the background whispered, is she serious? Another voice said, oh my God. Then the curator looked back at the crowd. In light of this, we're retracting our endorsement of this exhibit, effective immediately. The camera shook, someone gasped, and the footage ended. I sat on the edge of the spa lounge chair, still holding my tea. She plagiarized me. Not just my support, not just my emotional labor. She took my actual words, the ones I'd helped her draft when she was applying to artist residencies years ago. Statements I had written late into the night, half out of love, half out of desperation to keep her afloat. I remembered reading her old grant essays out loud while she paced, rewriting paragraphs while she cried into takeout containers. That work, that language, had traveled with her. And now, she'd built her career on it. My hands trembled, not from rage. Not even from satisfaction, just from the stillness of watching a storm pass without being inside it. I opened Instagram again. Her story was gone, replaced with a single black screen that read, taking time offline. Thank you for your understanding. Comments were already piling up on her old posts. Words like fraud, thief, liar. I didn't write anything. I didn't repost the video. I didn't message her or anyone. I just closed the app and finished my tea. For once, I wasn't the one left cleaning up someone else's mess. The messages came in waves. At first, it was the usual suspects, my aunt, my uncle, a couple of Lila's friends who had always treated me like some boring guardian figure. Now their texts were long, panicked. She's devastated. Please talk to her. Whatever happened, she still sees you as family. She needs your support now more than ever. Then came the email. It was from her assistant, Ava, a shy, polite girl I remembered helping move a couch once. Hi Vincent, I know this might not be my place, but I wanted to reach out. Lila is not doing well. She hasn't slept. She's barely eating. She's ashamed, and I think deep down, she just wants you to forgive her. She said you were the one person she thought would never turn away. Please, if there's anything you can do, just a message, anything. She needs you now more than ever. Ava, I read it twice. I even started to write something back, then stopped. It's not that I didn't care. That was the hardest part. I still did. Part of me still saw her as the girl on my couch, sobbing over her mom's voicemails. The kid who called me at midnight because she thought her neighbor was watching her through the peephole. The girl who whispered you saved my life after I gave her my old laptop for art school. But the truth was simpler. Every time she needed someone, I showed up. And every time I needed someone, she looked away. I opened my camera roll instead, scrolled to a photo I had taken the day before, the harbor fog rolling in, soft and heavy over the water, a coffee cup resting on the wooden rail in the foreground. I posted it with the caption, "Sometimes healing begins when you stop saving the people who hurt you." No tags, no shade, just the truth. I muted the group thread my aunt had added me to. Family Circle, a new title, but the same old script. Pity, guilt, expectation. Lila's young. She didn't mean to exclude you. Don't let one mistake ruin everything. But it wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern, invisibility, erasure, rewriting history to fit her image while I stood quietly in the margins. They never noticed how much I gave until I stopped giving. I brewed another coffee, opened a blank document on my laptop, and started typing again. Not for her. Not for anyone else. Just for me. An idea I had shelved years ago. A tech philosophy hybrid piece I never had time to finish. But now, I had time, and space, and silence. Outside the window, the fog stayed low. The water didn't rush or ripple. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to fix anyone else's storm. Let them swim. Let them drown. I had finally learned how to float. The subject line read, Financial documents request. Urgent. It was from my aunt. Formal, cold, like we were strangers handling business, not blood navigating betrayal. I didn't even need to open the email to know what it was about. Still, I clicked. Vincent, Lila needs to refinance her lease due to recent circumstances. Since you're still listed as a co-signer, we need your updated financial documents so the bank can proceed. Please send them over as soon as possible. Julia. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I typed exactly one word in reply. No. Hit send. Closed the laptop. That same hour, I logged into my bank and shut down the shared emergency fund, the one I had opened 3 years ago, just in case Lila ever needed help. It had started as a safety net, became a slush fund. I had forgotten how many times it got drained without warning. Next, I made the harder call, the estate attorney, the one who'd helped me set up beneficiaries for my modest but growing assets. I told him to update everything, remove Julia, remove her husband, remove Lila. They didn't even know they were listed, that I had, for years, quietly designated them as recipients of my life insurance policy, my emergency holdings, my investment rollover, all under the logic of, well, they're the closest thing I've got to family, but not anymore. The click of a mouse, the signing of a form, and just like that, gone. I didn't do it in anger. I didn't slam drawers or break dishes or fantasize about revenge. It was quieter than that, more permanent, like changing the locks on a house you no longer live in. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a new document, a blank page, empty space. And for the first time in a long while, I started building something that had nothing to do with anyone else. No one else's panic, no one else's deadlines, just my work. A creative tech piece I had outlined years ago but buried under obligations. I reopened the file, wiped the dust off the code, and started sketching again, not with pressure, but with curiosity. My money was mine now, my time too, so was my peace. And it turned out, when you stop bleeding out for people who don't see you, you realize how much strength you've been wasting. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not with checks, not with silence, not with saving. The rescue chapter was closed. The rebuild had begun. I didn't hear the doorbell, just the knock, hard and rhythmic, the kind that didn't wait politely. I checked the peephole inside. It was my aunt, hair done, purse clutched, eyes already narrowed like she'd practiced the expression in the car mirror. I opened the door halfway, enough to be civil, but not enough to invite her in. She didn't wait for an invitation anyway. "Are you really going to turn your back on us?" she asked, brushing past me into the living room like it still belonged to her memories. I closed the door behind her and stayed standing. She looked around like she didn't recognize the place. Probably didn't. I had moved the furniture around, added new paintings. There were no photos on the walls anymore. No framed pictures of Lila and me at her graduation. No family portraits. Just clean walls and space. "I thought maybe if I saw you in person, you'd come to your senses," she said, turning toward me with a tight smile. "You've always been a little too dramatic when you're hurt." I didn't say anything. "You've known Lila since she was a teenager," she continued. "You basically helped raise her. You were like a brother. No, more than that. And now, you're just walking away." I finally stepped forward, slow and quiet. "You know what the problem is, Julia?" She blinked. "What?" "You all keep acting like I abandoned her. Like I betrayed some sacred bond." I paused, feeling the weight of every time I'd swallowed my pride in this very room. "But the truth is, she walked away first. She erased me, and you all helped her do it." My aunt let out a short, dismissive laugh. "It was one night, one mistake. You're blowing it out of proportion." "No," I said, calm and clear. "It wasn't one night. It was every time you told me to stay quiet for the sake of peace. Every time you told me to understand her creative journey while she left me behind. Every time I was expected to give and give and give without being seen." She shook her head, stepping toward me like she was still in charge. "You were family, Vincent. Family sticks it out." I stared at her. "No," I said. "I was family, past tense." She froze. "Now," I continued, You're just people who once lived in my timeline. Something flickered in her expression. Maybe guilt, maybe anger, maybe the slow understanding that her words didn't work anymore. She picked up her purse. This isn't you, she muttered. You used to be so useful, I offered. She flinched, then turned toward the door. Lila's still your responsibility whether you want her to be or not. Don't forget that. I followed her to the threshold and opened the door for her. I already did, I said. She didn't look back. I stood there after she left, letting the door click shut, letting the quiet settle around me again. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about anger. It was about finally hearing the truth in my own silence and deciding to believe it. I moved to Santa Fe on a Tuesday. No announcement, no farewell dinner, no sappy posts about fresh starts or closing chapters. I just packed what I needed into a rental van, gave my landlord in Chicago a quiet thank you, and drove south until the skyline flattened into desert. My new place was small, a single-bedroom flat with a creaky porch and windows that caught every angle of the light. The walls were bare when I got there, but I liked them that way. Clean, empty, ready. The first morning, I brewed coffee on a tiny stovetop and stood barefoot by the window, watching dust roll across the road. There was no traffic noise, no train rumble, no people talking behind thin apartment walls. Just wind and morning sun, and my own breath. And for once, it felt like enough. I didn't tell anyone I was here. Not family, not friends. Not even the coworkers who used to pull me into endless meetings, just to check in. I stopped being available to anyone who had only ever reached out when they needed something. Instead, I turned back to what I had abandoned years ago, creating. I pulled out an old sketch pad I hadn't touched since my 20s, started scribbling again. Not for art school essays, not for Lila's projects, not for anyone's approval. Just shapes, motion, color, whatever came to mind. Then I reopened some old tech blueprints I'd shelved back when life got too loud. One of them turned into a prototype, then into a product pitch. By the third week, I had 3 small commissions lined up. Nothing big, just local artists and shops needing digital help. But it was real, paid, mine. The people here were different, too. Not better, just quieter. They asked how your day was and meant it. The guy at the bookstore already knew my name by the second visit. The woman at the corner cafe waved when she saw me walking by. No one knew who I used to be. No one cared. And that, strangely, was the greatest relief. I didn't need to be a mentor, or a brother, or a backup parent. I didn't need to fix anyone, explain myself, or justify my choices. All I had to be was a guy who made things. In a town that didn't owe me anything, and expected nothing in return. The email came late. No subject line. Just her name, Lila. I hovered my cursor over it for a few seconds before clicking. Vincent, I know I hurt you. I know I left you out when I shouldn't have. But I lost everything too. The show, my name, my future, all of it. I made a mistake. A big one. But I never stopped caring about you. I hope you believe that. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say it. I'm sorry, Lila. I stared at the screen. It didn't make me angry. It didn't make me feel vindicated either. Mostly, I just felt tired. It was the kind of apology that came after the storm, once the walls were already broken, once the dust had settled, and there was nothing left to salvage but regret. I didn't reply. A couple hours later, another message came in, this time from my aunt. A simple line. Family forgives. That one, I did respond to. I deleted it. I went for a walk after that. Santa Fe had this quiet way of holding you when your head got too loud. The wind here didn't demand your attention. It just passed through, like it belonged more to the land than you. I walked past adobe walls and soft-lit shops, past blooming cactus and rusted wind chimes. I let the silence settle in again, and in that space, something became clearer than it had ever been. They wanted forgiveness without understanding, reconnection without accountability. They wanted the old me, the one who answered every call, who patched every emotional leak, who showed up even when he was bleeding. But that man didn't live here anymore. He stayed back in Chicago, or maybe in the inbox I never opened again. Back at my flat, I lit a candle on the windowsill and opened my sketchbook. A new design was forming, something different from my usual digital layouts. More personal, more grounded. As I started drawing, I realized this wasn't about punishing anyone. It wasn't about holding grudges or building walls. It was about choosing silence not as a weapon, but as a shield. Not to hurt, just to heal. On my terms. It happened on a Sunday. I was at a cafe just off Canyon Road, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and faded jazz playing through ceiling speakers. I had my usual table near the window, sketchbook open, pinned between my fingers. Nothing urgent, just lines, shapes, the steady rhythm of solitude. I didn't see them at first. It was the sound that caught my attention, the soft jingle of the front door, then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Her voice, Lila's. I looked up. There they were, Lila and my aunt, standing just inside the doorway, scanning the room. My aunt looked older, somehow, or maybe just smaller. And Lila? She looked the same, maybe a little worn down around the edges, but still dressed like she had something to prove. Her eyes met mine. For a second, no one moved. She raised her hand, a cautious wave, a smile that asked for something unspoken. My aunt nudged her gently, like maybe she'd rehearsed this. Maybe they both had. I didn't wave back. I didn't frown either. I just turned back to my coffee, flipped the page in my sketchbook, and kept drawing. No anger, no scene, no performance. They didn't walk over. Maybe they understood what that meant, or maybe they didn't. But after a minute, they turned and left. The bell above the door jingled again, and the world outside swallowed them back up. I stared at the doorway for a beat longer. Then I took a sip of coffee. Warm, bitter, steady. There was a time I would have needed that moment, needed them to grovel, to explain, to finally get it, to say we were wrong or you were right. Some closure to wrap the mess in a neat little bow. But sitting there, with the sun warming my table and the page filling with lines that only I could see, I realized I didn't need it anymore. No revenge, no reconciliation, no permission, just space, just self-respect, just silence. And in that silence, there was peace. Not the kind you ask for, not the kind anyone gives you, the kind you make, the kind you choose.